Welcome to Flow of Substance. This isn't an episode. This is to catch us up on current events that's currently going on in the world. My name is Earl Deku, one half of Flow of Substance. Currently, my partner is dealing with making his album right now, so I'm gonna let him work on his creative process while I continue to hold the brand into a pushing forward, making sure we drop content and able to keep up to date on certain things. He'll be on here, but currently he's working on his album and he's trying to get that right. So we're giving him his time. Shout out to Dave Romaine and everything you do, bro. I'm gonna start it off with this. I understand we got pop culture and we always focus on that, but as I'm gonna take the rim, I'm gonna take the rim into a place where we also talk bigger news, bigger world events, such as the current inflation we're dealing with, midterm elections, and as we see it, things that really cause things to revolve, and the reason why we have lights, electricity, warm water, and all those things, right? Again, I've communicated that there are more important things in the world than just what's going on in celebrities' lives and what their viewpoints are and things. Enlightenment and information is always important. And I really want to take the word of the day. I will always say critical. And we'll get more into that as we go. But let me stop rambling and get into what the things that need to be done. You know me, I'm one take. I don't restart nothing. If I slip up, if I get the information wrong, please correct me in the comments. But as we seeing today, there's a situation where, we get into a lot of crazy inflation every day as it goes on. Right now, the big current events is that inflation rose to about 8%, 8.2%. And what does that mean, right? Let's speak in layman's terms because we ain't really giving a fuck about that, right? Like, oh, inflation rose this, inflation rose that. The only thing that kind of relates to us is when we see the prices on the groceries, prices on the gas, and prices on certain utilities go up. And that's what inflation rate means. Currently, we're dealing with a situation where energy demand, supply shortages are affected not only in America. Americans, we got this thing, in my opinion, that we really put ourselves in this bubble and we don't focus on the outside borders and how it affects us. Because I think, in my opinion, what I see from Americans that they feel like the world revolves around their country, and that's not the truth. We are a world that's unilateral. We all work together and to get to one focused goal for the most part, and that's tolerance and functionality to the world. There's wars and things and that kind of dysfunctions the sway, but we trying to get more in tune to that as our humanity continues on this dirt motherfucking planet we call Earth. Anyway, so with that, like, we know the war in Ukraine is getting a little out of whack and a lot of crazy. Due to that, a lot of world focus on sanctions, a lot of world focus on restricting certain energy purchases from certain countries that's dictating how things are going to play out from an import-export standpoint, right? So everyone across this plane, from the European Union, from the UK, from the countries of Africa, from Eastern Europe, from South America, from North America, right? All are feeling this. This is not something that Americans are going through. This is not something just because this one world leader is in power. It's something that's coming about just because we dealt with a pandemic. Now we're moving on, and we moved on to the world trying to really function into a point where we can see great things from the housing market. We can see great things from the import export. We can see great things from the job markets. We can see great things from the STEM sectors. With that being said, it's getting harder and harder to do so just through the fact we come from a pandemic to a world crisis of shortage and employee shortages. Now you leave the pandemic boom from all the COVID relief and payments and things like that and stimulating the economy that is no longer relative anymore. So people are now got to go in the backs and the bones of everything. But the growth of inflation is outpacing the growth of employment wages. So with that being said, is that you're gonna see people are starting to grip and hold on to whatever little bit of money they come across. It's coming tight out here. Dollars aren't spending as much as they used to because we need to focus on the more important things that keeps a country, that keeps people running. You move on to that, right? So you still have the war in Ukraine. If people didn't know, The war in Ukraine is at an all-time high of death and merciless like combat for either side, right? Obviously, it seems like the world is looking at a good guy, bad guy thing. Ukrainian being the underdog, good guy just looking to protect themselves, and Russian being everything that we see in the movies, right? So everything that we see in the movies, from they are the Ivan Drago, right? They are that person that's being the bully of the East and putting everything in their empire. We're looking at Putin as the typical archetype of a villain for a James Bond movie, right? And due to that, that is definitely been the case, I would say, from my opinion. I'm not that I stand with their stand at, but I can understand where both sides is coming from. But for sure, I can see Ukraine being the country standing idly by. Obviously, Eastern Ukraine has always been in constant conflict with Russian separatists, so this isn't new. This war is like probably 15 to 20 years in the making. We're just now seeing the peak of all that tension at this point in time. So you're seeing like hundreds of thousands of troops are dying, even more civilian casualties. Obviously, information is kind of sketchy because the Ukrainians are still their own country and they're putting the information in a vacuum, and we're only able to get a certain amount that's relative to how we see it and what it has effect to our country, right? We see that there needs to be a move from the Russians from vacating certain areas of Ukraine, and currently that's happening. Apparently, the Ukrainians are taking a lot of their country back and pushing the Russians out of here, and it's getting a little bit stringent for Russian troops to keep advancing because obviously all this world funding from Ukraine, from the major NATO allies, is really putting a dent in the Russian advance in the Russians advance into Ukraine. That just puts us in a situation where what does this have an effect towards us, and do we need Ukraine to win to help further our game? If Ukraine, say Russia withdraws, or there's an armistice or a treaty signed today, that does put a good view and good bump in people's emotions and a good bump in emotional influence and investment to the market. It necessarily doesn't change the fact that there's still supply shortages, there's still energy demands, and there is also the idea of that, what if the Ukrainians don't stop? You know what I'm saying? What if the Ukrainians push even more and push those borderlines? Because people can become pissed and tensions can become very skewed when we see all this blood, death, and murder, right? You can't just say Ukrainians, they'll push Russians out of their country and they won't continue to advance further to further their borders and make sure Russia stays in a place. You can't say that Putin will somehow gain a conscience and a morality and really listen to the Ukrainians who want to be, from what the information says, they want to be NATO allies. They want to have those trade and those tax benefits, and they want to have a bigger say in what they believe is progression towards the way the rest of the world is going from the powers that be. So just because the major physical conflict is over does not mean the economic conflict will be over. So it may take some time for us to really get to a place where we can move and flow in the economy and the trade lines and all this import export, and you know what I'm saying, the functioning governments can really bend to each other's will in a way that ends up in a world conference versus ending up on a battlefield. Because on a battlefield, it's bloody, it's gory, children are dying, and you know what I'm saying, in war, sons are buried by their fathers versus the other way around. And we are just trying to look in a better light and a better thing, because I see it, even though the Russians are leaving certain areas of Ukraine. You know, President Zelensky, the president of Ukraine currently right now, right? He had this great quote that I want to, repeat. Hopefully I don't butcher it. It says, "No one just leaves if they do not feel strong. The enemy does not give us gifts. They do not make gestures of goodwill. Everything we get is fought for through blood, through sacrifice." Yeah, man, I feel like that. So it's critical, right? At word of the day, it's critical that we always see that nothing is just being given. Everything comes with the strategy. So you have to critically think, why are these things coming into our face? Why is this energy bringing it? What is the buildup to get us to this point, into this area of why this happens, and why does this have an effect to us? I just encourage everyone to critically think, for real. Critically think and put your brain together to really look between the lines. Don't take everything at surface value. There's always a deeper context to everything. And just because they tell you the truth doesn't mean it is the truth. Always think critically. 100%, because if you don't, I'm telling you, you're setting yourself up to be fooled. You're setting yourself up to be stabbed in the back, and you're giving your opponent a chance to attack when you least expect it. Don't make any silent agreements out here. And with that, it's voting time, right? And the votes have been casted. They're still counting the ballots. Currently, as I'm living in the state of Florida, North Florida. Can't say exactly where. Just trying to keep some confidentiality on it. Don't need these niggas knowing where I live. But exactly right. But currently we have a situation, right, where that Trumpism of Republicans and alt-right and heavy conservatives and GOP and Republicans and moderates and all these things came into fruition after the current president Joe Biden came into the White House. But obviously that was going on before. Trumpism, the red wave, extreme Republican and conservatism was pushed to the forefront of mainstream media, seeing as it created a huge divide and borderlines. There were riots, there were protests, there were certain repeals of laws that have been in place for 40 to 50 years, and all of these things, right? So obviously Trumpism I'm using air quotes when I say that, by the way, y'all just can't see it. Trumpism has put into effect like the repeal of Roe v. Wade, the heavy sense of leaning like lackadaisical corporate tax laws. Lackadaisical, I just learned that word. That's a word too, lackadaisical. But yeah. So you have things where people will belittle one another, create this line of one another, and there's no longer being those uncomfortable conversations had in a comfortable setting. Now everyone's yelling and shouting and hooping and hollering at each other, right? So the election time is leading to what probably will be the Republicans more than likely going to control a significant amount of political push and pull into certain laws that are changing. Because, yes, people may think Roe v. Wade was met with a lot of controversy, and it was, no doubt, but at the same time, most states, like where there's a major populace, they have a heavily conservative base. Even in the blue states, even in states like California, even in states like New York, they still have a heavy conservative backing. So there's no one voice speaking for everyone. But if that voice, there can be a controlling and a vacuum created for both voices to walk through. And right now, it may look like it's swinging red. So if you are little, what's critical of conservative politics, you may want to look into what's going on in your local elections. You may want to look what's going on to your state elections. Look at laws, look at judges, look at mayors, all these things, what side that they lean on. Because elections, especially midterms, which I think they show a bigger change than just the major federal election, which is all we know is the president election. Midterm elections change governors, lieutenant governors, senators, House of Representatives, and so on and so forth. So if you're not looking into that, you're waiting for yourself to be told what to do out of nowhere that you had no information to gain. You better put your motherfucking head to all this goddamn information that's coming out, and really put yourself into where you tied in. You know everything that's going on. Everything is cool in pop culture and shit like that, but that shit doesn't really have a strong relation to your actual life, such as politics, such as law, such as economy, such as the trades of goods and services, economics, and all this stuff. Those are the things that truly have somewhat of a direct effect to how you walk day to day. Because politicians change laws, economics cause power, and then you, as yourself, can move in a way where you're informed on where you're going, from a law standpoint, from a money standpoint. Guns and butter, baby, as they said in Baby Boy. That shit really has a relative sense to how you need to live your life now. So just be a voice, man, for the future, and a real voice. Enlightenment is great, and enlightenment and learning is very important. But enlightening doesn't mean you're smarter for learning this information. It means you're more informed. Smart is how you apply that information in practical ways that has a direct effect to your life. And I mean in the physical, mental, and spiritual. It has to do the trifecta. You can't just do it in one. It has to do it in all three. So be a voice. Be bold. Just just don't really just be fooled by the bullshit and the shit they use to blind you in the pop culture and the celebrity news is cool because it gives us a good things to talk about and relative information that we can dissect from a popular person. But just because a person is popular does not mean they're intelligent. Just because a person is intelligent does not mean they have to be popular in order for you to spread that information. That smart person could be right directly next to you. They could be your neighbor. You know what I'm saying? It don't have to be somebody on that fucking TV screen, somebody on like some fucking like show or movie or music or modeling or influencer or whatever, bro. That shit, it's kind of just more noise. You know what I'm saying? More white noise that you like. It just puts your head in a constant influx of like, what is important and what is. Just really, the world is much bigger. You know what I'm saying? Humble yourself, because if you don't, the world will humble you. I'm telling you, the world will. And I don't want to be negative on the end of it, but prepare for hard times. You know, inflation ain't going nowhere. The supply shortage ain't gonna get solved in a day. And Ukrainians and Russians are still fighting, and that has a direct effect to the world's economy. If you don't educate yourself, if you don't believe that, educate yourself for real. There's a lot of things going on in the world that are more important than what's going on in pop culture. And I'm going to bring that. We're still going to come with pop culture news. We're still coming with sports news because we do watch the things and we do take those things into consideration and we do let that information seek in and soak in. But at the same time, there are bigger and better things going on. Not better, but bigger and much more influential things going on. You know what I'm saying, in the world. So I just wanted to take time to put that out there as well. Thank you for tuning in always. This is Flow of Substance, the world.